This is definitely going to need a lot of editing kind of going through here. So thank you, Chris, for the work. Um,
You're
so
welcome.
moving on, folks, to the well, I would sit to say it is working our way up to the main event. We're going to cover The Frighteners. Chris has had us watch the movie, covered it. Um, we definitely have quite a few thoughts on it, especially because I love watching podcast interviews and all that. So I always learn something new about a film. In this film, it definitely hits it with Dee Wallace and a couple other things that we'll get into later on. But first, I definitely, because like any podcast, we have to drop some backstory into the Frighteners before I let Chris off his leash and he runs wild like the good boy he is. But I'm so sorry, Chris. I'm so sorry. So, yeah,
Sorry.
obviously directed by Peter Jackson and written by both him and I do believe they were already a couple at the time, Fran Walsh. Try saying that fucking 600 damn times. This concept was conceived while they were writing the Heavenly Creatures film. Robert Zemeckis wanted to direct this, and he loved the idea of what that they were going for. Uh, it would be a spinoff for the Tales of the Crypt that Zemeckis and Richard Donner and many other producers, were hoping for. But throughout the process, reading through the scripts, the story that they were figuring out, Zemeckis at the time was thinking, "No, you know what? Peter Jackson, he definitely deserves this acting gig. This is something only Peter Jackson can fucking perform." And so Zemeckis took a executive producer role for this. Um, and yeah, a little bit about Zemeckis, because we're just going to focus a little bit on him. His first foray kind of into horror, from the earliest I can find, was him writing an episode for Kolchak the Night Stalker. That episode is called Chopper. Again, I've only seen a couple of episodes of Kolchak. All I knew was that it was kind of like a blueprint for the creators of the X Files for him to do his show. It's a very cheesy, out there kind of TV show, but kind of glad enough that one of my favorite TV shows used that as the inspiration. So I do go back from time to time to watch that. Um, but yeah, at the time that Frighteners was getting ready to come out, Zemeckis was just wrapping up Tales from the Crypt, the TV show, because quite honestly, when the show finally aired its last episode, that's when the Frighteners went into the theaters on the exact same day, July 19th, 1996. They share that common date, and only three days short of a month would Bordello of Blood, the second Tales from the Crypt movie, would come, and that would kind of be like the final goodbye for Tales of the Crypt. There was Ritual, but Ritual is technically not considered a Tales from the Crypt movie, but some people look at it as a spiritual successor to tie into the trilogy. Um, so, Chris, the reins are off to you.
All right. So yeah, for Frighteners, this is probably got to be one of my favorite horror movies of all time. And I remember I was putting it on earlier this week for Mike to watch in the hotel here, and he was playing on his Steam Deck, and he was just like getting kind of distracted looking at the movie. You were like saying, "Oh damn it, no, you're putting on something interesting now. I can't look away."
Uh,
Everything Peter
it's
Jackson
those
does
mic.
is interesting, no matter how experimental or out there. Peter Jackson
Yeah,
definitely knows how to get your attention.
yeah. And like after doing Brain Dead, like this came after Brain Dead, right? This is definitely
Brain Dead, Brain Dead. You mean Dead
yeah.
Alive? Oh well, yeah. I
Dead
think it was
Alive.
called
I
Brain
think
Dead
it.
in the
Yeah,
native land of New Zealand. Yeah, my bad, my bad. I'm used
yeah.
to the American name.
I just love everything about this
This came out.
movie
I
because
think this came out right after that and right after Bad Taste, because I think Bad Taste was like a year or so before this, if I remember
yeah,
correctly. I don't know. I
I will
can't sit
add
there and
that it
move away
was
from the source thing, otherwise we lose all camera on the recording. So I can't do my daily research for that.
okay.
it was
But
a bit of a shocking moment to see Marty McFly become a con artist. I think he was a better con artist than our Institute of Houston, that's for sure.
Yeah,
stay tuned for the
he,
exclusive.
yeah.
At least they filmed.
He's just a very likable character. Kind of obviously like doing a little something a little shady
Yeah.
to make a living.
Mm-hmm.
He has after a tragic car accident, his wife dies, and he can see the dead after that and communicate with them. So
Mm-hmm.
he sets up a little grift to cause hauntings, and then like a Ghostbuster come by and trap the ghosts and purge the ghosts of the area they're haunting.
Yeah.
And eventually he's kind of outed, but the town is stricken with uh, mysterious heart attacks on uh, young adults who are perfectly healthy and should not be having heart attacks.
Yeah.
So, just with Michael J. Fox, I'm done.
I'm sorry, Chris is dying, folks,
It
and
was-
everything. Chris is
Yeah.
dying, and they're
Yeah,
recording in the
my
same
throat's
room. So
been-
if you do hear an echo, that's why.
He's getting killed by the ghost right now. That's actually what's
Yeah.
happening. It's
Yeah,
reaching into his throat and choking him
Jake
from the
Jake
inside.
Busey is reaching into that chest and everything. You know, that's how he
Yeah,
keeps his father alive.
just a wonderful cast. Jeffrey Combs from The Reanimator. His character Milton, the FBI agent,
I can't
it's
stand
just
that
the
character.
wackiest, strangest character. I love him so much because he's just so out there.
When we get towards the end,
paranoid.
yeah, we'll definitely sit there and we'll
we
talk
bring-
about my thoughts on Jeffrey Combs. It's not
Can
my
we
favorite
bring
role.
back the wacky
Well,
character? Can we bring back those wacky characters that just are too ridiculous to have on TV now? Like, what's going on with this?
that's kind of like the last bit of vaudeville that you kind of get.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I enjoyed the movie too much. I was trying to play Halo Infinite. I was trying to get grind away to get my freaking season through so that I don't have to pay for anything. And then I'm looking up and I'm like, oh no, this movie is fun. This is looking funny as hell.
I
A
can't
little
sit
awkward
there.
at some things.
I can't say ew to Halo because I play Fortnite, and so I get killed all the time by kids, and then I get pissed off.
No, one thing I'm surprised about is how good the visual effects are. Like, there are certain effects that I have no
Some
idea
that did
how
not
they could have
age,
done them.
but that mirror scene,
They might
that
not
mirror
have
scene with
aged
the
like
yeah.
They might have not aged like what they should like today, but they still are interesting. They're still unique. There was a character I believe who had like an eyeball falling out or something.
Yeah.
And he looked like he was part prosthetic and part real actor.
The judge with his jaw coming off. That
Yeah, and it's
definitely.
just
So
Well,
I
that's-
ended
it
up
looked
learning that
practical.
one right there with the judge was they got Rick Baker to do all of the makeup appliances for I'm forgetting the actor's name, but he was the original Adams lead. He's the guy who plays Sam's adopted daddy. Oh my god, I can't believe I'm dropping a fucking this is part of the podcast where everyone
I think he's
loses...
reaching into your mind. I think that ghost is reaching into your mind and just crushing it from the inside.
But
But like
Gomez Adams, that's who it was.
Gomez
He played
Adams.
Gomez Adams in the original
Oh.
black and white.
Yeah.
So he played the outlaw thing, and the only thing that was digital in there was just the jaw falling off, which obviously they didn't just rip off his jaw and throw it around like in the
I
museum.
figured it was like a prosthetic jaw on top of his mouth, and like it was kind of removable.
Yeah,
or
they
something.
just digitally
But-
did the whole scene where the jaw comes off. That's just digitally
Yeah.
done, but everything else is all prosthetically done. And
still, what a wonderful blend of like visual effects, CGI, and practical. Like, it is
that's
a
how CGI
negative
should be
of-
used.
yeah, well, it's an what do you call it? You're removing. It's a negative fill or something. You're removing from an actor, which is harder to do. You can add prosthetics on top, but removing from them is even less believable. And I mean, that's a fun movie, and it's visually consistent. Even if the visual effects are not the best, they're consistent, and once you're in, you're in.
If you're telling a good story, the CGI could be shit. But if it's a good story, you're gonna sit and watch it.
I mean, like
And
I
that's
have a good handful of films that are terrible CGI, but like they're a great story. One of those films is not Lawnmower Man, but that is another terrible nightmare to if you want to watch something for this holiday season. Is Lawnmower Man? That was a terrible CGI, terrible CGI
See,
film.
my bias is that all visual effects are great. I actually love CGI, even if they're bad, because they're at least because if it's bad, there's a reason it's bad, and you can learn from it, and you can learn how to not do it again in your visual effects. I mean, but come on, like, what's his name? The Rock coming out as a giant scorpion and
Yeah, but
the
even
Mummy.
then, like
Yeah.
again, going back to like the SAG-AFTRA and then the unionizing of the visual effects, those guys were pushed way too damn much and then told, you got to reach this deadline, and you're like, dude, we're not even done with The Rock yet. And that's when he came out and he looked, but even then, it still doesn't look nearly as bad. It looks pretty decent. It still looks like it's part practical for what they did, but like they still kind of cake too much around like the eyes and whatnot. It's still that's where you kind of get that like, oh god, this is terrible. It's because we look at the facial, we look at that, and then we try to look at the shape, and yeah.
So when are we gonna get a sequel to this movie?
Probably not for a while.
I was about to say, not with Marty
Honestly,
McFly.
like, this is like Back to the Future. You don't touch this movie. No one should touch this movie or Back to the Future. Like, I thought this was Robert Zemeckis' movie. I didn't realize Peter Jackson had directed it, just because the vibe of the story and the characters all just felt so fun, and in the way they interacted with each other. I loved how the mystery was set up early on with the news reporters, and how they eventually become victims for the serial killer to come in. And
Are you saying that Peter Jackson doesn't make fun, interesting stories?
He does. I'm just saying, like,
I know, I love it.
I think with Peter Jackson today, well, Peter Jackson doesn't really do much today. I really kind of feel like Peter Jackson kind of didn't really have to do much of anything once he finished doing the Lord of the Rings movies. After that, Peter didn't really have to do much of anything. I think he made enough fucking money off of those Ring movies, the Kong movie. That's pretty much kind of it. After that, you don't really hear too much about him. You know, I'm pretty sure he produces more now, but you know,
Citizen Kane's.
Yeah.
You know, Robert Zemeckis isn't one of those directors that you hear a lot about, but he's consistently a fun watch.
Yeah.
Like you might not hear his name as much as Steven Spielberg's or George Lucas or whatever, but it's every single movie I've seen of his is just like, it's either fun as hell, or I'm gonna call it one of my favorite movies of all time. Like, I've loved Back to the Future. That film is untouchable for me. You know what's sad? I wonder if Robert Zemeckis was involved in that Universal Studios Back to the Future ride. Because it has that kind of funness that Robert Zemeckis films have, you know, just goofy, over the top, yet still has heart. Like, this movie has both heart inside being crushed and heart outside.
Yeah.
I need to check that out.
Also, too, there is one thing I do have to mention. For someone that had started working in 75 for Zemeckis, he still is getting current work today. Like, the last one, I haven't seen it, but he did Pinocchio. He directed Disney's Pinocchio. And everything.
With Tom Hanks?
Yeah. He has a movie coming out next year called Here. He did the 2020 remake of Witches. Welcome to Marwen, which I haven't seen that one. That one's with Michael Scott. I can't think of his name right now. He did the Jim Carrey Christmas Carol, the CGI animation, which is very much funny, because when we start really talking about like the CGI that's in the Frighteners, like with the villain that, you know, we all just sit there see at first as the Grim Reaper, and the way how that animation is done, I wonder if he reuses certain animation people and everything, because if you kind of look at Who Framed Roger Rabbit, which he did work on that one, there are some similar animations, and then you look at something like A Christmas Carol with the Jim Carrey one, there are again some similar animations. Zemeckis is he's not a one-trick pony. This man definitely knows his shit around, from producing to directing to visual art, like the visual animation. He does it. He even did Polar Express. There's so much, like, for a man who worked so hard in the 90s doing wrapping up the Back to the Future stuff, and then doing Death Becomes Her, Forrest Gump, Bordello of Blood, and the whole Tales from the Crypt stuff that he executive produced. This man still has, like, he even did producing credit for House on Haunted Hill, the remake, the Demon Knight movie. He did Gothica. He did Ghost Ship, 13 Ghosts. Yeah. Mars Needs Moms. This man's everywhere. It is between Lucas and Spielberg. Zemeckis is the one that doesn't really get talked about too much. Yeah. I think that's because his work is a little bit more broad towards different avenues, where you definitely know when you watch like it still has his touch. You know when you watch a Robert Zemeckis film compared to watching a Spielberg film, compared to watching a Lucas film. Because we also have that Howard the Duck was. Marty. Yeah.
Marty McFly. That's Marty McFly right there.
Yeah.
And just
I
like the New Zealand town that it filmed in, like the hills going up,
it's
like
beautiful.
it added to the atmosphere and just like how kind of dark it was, but and the buildings, the house that the serial killer is kind of hanging out in, his soul is hanging out in.
Oh, the
It
asylum.
was very
The
creepy.
asylum.
Well,
Or
the
are you
asylum and
are you
the
talking about the
girlfriend's
plate?
house.
Okay, okay, okay.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
girlfriend's house.
Asylum was terrifying.
The
That
asylum
terrified
was
me.
That was pretty
Or
damn
the
good.
hospital. Yeah.
Yeah.
The hospital scene actually
It
terrified me. That's
yeah.
it's a little too dark for today when we have shootings left and right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so like
I
it's
mean
funny
that
when we
might hit home
revisit
for
these
people.
movies. It's funny when you revisit and then you see this, and because of what we go through in today's age, it's like, oh my god, that's a lot. You know, it's like, oh, that's actually
Yeah,
triggering, and it's like, but it's funny because it
Yeah.
wasn't triggering back then, but as you live through today, it's like, god damn, like
Well,
y-
at least the villain got his comeuppance this time.
yeah,
Both of
both of
them.
them.
both of them.
Both
Yeah,
of them.
When Milton bought it and you see his head explodes and you see his ghost kind of in its
Go
place,
through.
I was like, "That's perfect, man. That's a great idea."
Great
oh my
idea.
god. So speaking of, I guess before we jump in the Jeffrey Combs performance, we got to talk about Dee Wallace here. You know,
Yeah,
I grew up watching this film. Uh, did not know the amount of pain that this woman was at the time that she did this. Because at the time that this was filmed, she lost her husband. Because she was billed at the
yeah,
time in this movie as Dee Wallace Stone. Uh, and she ended up losing her husband. We won't get into much of the details of it because I definitely feel like we cannot sit there and really talk about um, just just how she tells the story of everything and what she went through. So we will actually drop in the description. We will drop the podcast clip from Inside of You with Michael Rosenbaum, where Dee Wallace does talk about that. It's a very, very powerful clip. And again, I was surprised that this woman was able to still perform and play. And you definitely now, going back and, because I rewatched it earlier this week as we're recording this, it, I see this performance so differently now knowing that story, and you can see that anguish that that woman
yeah,
has. And for one, Peter Jackson, we're gonna praise the man again. This dude paid for everything. He covered all of her trips, going back and forth to the funeral, to helping deal with all the stuff of losing her husband. He paid for all that while she was still working on set and filming. That man is a
yeah.
fucking treasure, you know. And we should definitely treasure that man because he's such a good soul that he takes care of his people, which you don't often see all the time. Um, it's very rare. It's very rare. Or if you do, you just don't hear about it. Not yet. Not until they're older and they
I
talk
mean,
about it.
just like really fueled her performance because like you're thinking she's the victim throughout the whole movie, but in reality, she's working with the serial killer. So
Yeah.
like you can see the anguish in her performance from the beginning before that turn comes
Yeah.
towards the end.
You could just feel it. It's in the eyes. It's in everything. And you're just like, what
Yeah,
happened to this woman? And everything, and yeah, when you do kind of learn a little bit more of the backstage stuff, it does give you a different insight. It definitely changes how maybe the film should be perceived. And I mean, so I guess before watch this movie, and or at least watch her scenes before you hear about her story, and then watch
yeah,
that clip, and then go back and watch the movie, and you get probably you. For me, I got two different sides of the emotion of how I felt from
do you
that.
think they filmed the ending first, where she's gone completely off the rails, and then
I
did
think
her
I
husband die before filming began, or
he died during the filming. So, in all honesty, I can't even sit there and piece together where did they film first and where did they film. You know, I
yeah,
think maybe probably some of the end stuff they probably did, but like you can definitely tell like in the scenes where she's introduced, when the love interest goes to see her, you could definitely sit there and see that there's a huge change, um, and that's pretty much all I think I can really sit there and state about that is you do sit there and you do see a shift of like this person who's just completely drained, but yet they're still putting on that performance and compared towards the end. And I wouldn't doubt it if they went and they reshot some of the scenes that were previously done to try to keep some maybe continuity to her progression. Um, uh, Trini Alvarado was the love interest. My bad. But yeah, no. Dee Wallace pulled out a fucking performance here. That was an amazing performance. And you know, like, it's upsetting that I did not discover so much of her performances until I was much older. You know, because like, you know, she did Cujo, she did Reanimator movies. You know, Jeffrey Combs. No, that's Barbara Crampton. My bad. My bad. I fucked that one up, folks. I fucked that one up. It was
Oh,
Barbara
okay.
Crampton.
We forgive you. It's okay.
You guys may forgive me, but the horror community, they're like, that's fucking Barbara Crampton, dude. Don't get those two mixed up. They're totally two different. but yeah, there's that, and but
I did mix. I did mix up Trini. I thought she was Elaine from Seinfeld.
Yeah.
oh,
They look exactly the same.
Exactly.
I can
And that's
see
why I
it.
realized I had to type. I had to type, and I was just like, oh well, there it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, Jeffrey Combs. So Chris loves this role. Chris, take it away.
Oh man, just the FBI agent who deals with the supernatural and was in a cult for months on or years on end, and mutilates his body to uh, protect himself against supernatural possessions or something, and he wears that lead vest. Oh man, I love how unhinged he is. Like you can tell all the weird cases that he gets. It just has kind of destroyed his mental health, and how he can't react very well when Trini's character is yelling at him, and
Mm-hmm.
he just kind of like scurries away and is like,
Yeah,
"Don't hurt me," you know? Yeah,
it's
and
almost like a Renfield
just
character kind of plays.
yeah,
Yeah.
and when he's got Michael J. Fox, and he thinks he understands the situation given his past, but like he makes continuous bad calls,
Yeah.
and like when Michael J. Fox has gone away from the museum, and the woman he's trying to protect, the reporter woman, dies in his care. Uh, they're back at the sheriff's station. He's like, Frank Bannister is a smart individual. He'll never come back here again. He's probably miles gone, and he just kind of walks in behind him. He's like, "Hey, sheriff, I'm here to turn myself in." He's just
Yeah.
like totally off guard.
And I truly do think that for that character, he takes such huge offense from because to me, I think as much as we like to make the joke about Michael J. Fox being the con artist in this, I think he's the biggest con artist to begin with because he's at least the one that can actually talk to the spirits. You know, he can at least
Yeah.
communicate with the damn dead. Whereas Jeffrey Combs has like this like, oh, like, you know, like I know exactly what you are, and it's like, dude, it's all like you have the faintest fucking idea of what the hell he is,
Yeah.
and um,
I mean, he does kind of like he brings up a good point how Michael J. Fox was kind of responsible for his wife's death in the backstory there,
uh
and
huh,
how it's kind of weird how there's a 13 carved in her head using his box cutter that is mysteriously gone.
yeah.
Mm.
But all that gets
So
revealed in time that it was all planted,
it was, yeah,
and
and just the interrogation room when he's like breaking it down, like how he thinks Frank committed murders, and he's just like, "You're trying to kill me right now, aren't you?" And Frank's just like, "God damn it, this idiot is just bugging the shit out of me."
it's like at this point it's like just bring the sheriff in here. I don't even want to deal with this Fed
Yeah,
anymore. And then
just
yeah, and
put
then
me
of course
away,
he
man.
rips off his shirt. He reveals the lead Kevlar, and it's like,
Hmm.
God, that's got to be heavy. It's got to be heavy. There's no way in hell, you know. Um,
Yeah,
but as much as it is to laugh, I do not like this role. I very much feel like this was a copy from Jim Carrey's shtick. And the only reason I say that is Batman Forever and Ace Ventura came out the year before this. So the year that this probably film was being filmed, you look at Jim Carrey's performances in Batman Forever and Ace Ventura When Nature Calls. Now you tell
I
me
feel like
if that's not if what Jeffrey Combs is doing something very similar to that, but he's pulling back a lot more on the silliness. But there's still there as much as there is some darkness in that character, there is silliness because the same year that this movie came out, Cable Guy did, and Jim Carrey took a very dark turn in his comedy. he still had a little bit of that charm, that goofy charm, but there was a darkness inside of him. So I don't know if 1996, when it came to comedic characters, that everyone was just in a very dark mindset, and they just add this really interesting, I don't know, like, I guess, thing of comedy into it that makes it very much unhinged. Like, it seems laughable, but at the same time, it's all like, oh, this dude's got some. He's not playing with with a full deck of cards. There's some fucking issues with this dude. Um,
Yeah.
We get to understand Jim Carrey's Cable Guy, his issues, but we don't get to understand Jeffrey Combs other than that this man needs a fucking vacation and a psych.
I mean, I kind of feel like it's a little unfair to compare to Jim Carrey because, like, I think
I only
Jim
do it
Carrey
because
gets
of just how the
mistakenly-
characters acted. That's it.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to compare careers or anything, but it just that there seems that within that year '96, some of your comedic characters are just dark. They're just very, very dark, and there's just something, I don't know. It's that's just what I think. That's just what comes up in my head. There seems to be a little bit of an overlap.
Well, when Robin Williams did his role for Aladdin, after that we started to see Eddie Murphy in Milan. We started to see comedians becoming actors and kind of take up a similar role. But I like Jeffrey Combs in this one. I thought he was. The movie didn't need him, but he was the spice on top of the movie.
He was the antagonistic force outside of the mystery.
Yeah.
You know what he kind of reminds me of? If you've ever seen the movie Soul, with I can't remember what the
Talking about the
actor's name
animated
was.
film?
The animated Pixar.
I haven't seen that one, but
the little Terry. I think his name is Terry, and he's just chasing them. Like, he's just that little antagonist that isn't actually part of the overall plot, but it's just just that fun. It's just a little fun little spice.
He's that little small antagonist that it anytime that it feels like the heroes kind of have like maybe like an edge or like they're getting a bit of a break, then it's there to be like, no, you're getting too comfortable. This is an external force keeping you from being being in a comfortable state. I guess that's kind of. I gotta see Soul. My mom saw that and she told me I need to watch that.
I think the whole Jim Carrey. I think it was like a more coincidence on that.
Yeah, it could easily. I'm not sitting here saying Jeffrey Combs copied Jim Carrey's shtick, but I just see a bit of a similarity. It's just Jeffrey Combs is a more reserved, even in his comedy, he's more reserved. But also too, I grew up watching this man in Reanimator, Castle Freak, etc., etc. I saw him try to play Shakespeare.
To weirdness,
Yeah, he's attracted to weirdness and everything, and so to see him in this, to me, I still think like, oh, this is it's different. I will give it. It's different. It's not Jeffrey Combs being Jeffrey Combs with Gordon Stewart or Stuart Gordon. Yeah, Stuart Gordon and everything. It's not like that and everything, but obviously it's still a different thing, and but it's still enjoyable. I guess real quick before we wrap things up, Jake Busey's Johnny Bartlett and Dee Wallace is Patricia Bradley. I kind of want to sit there and save this towards the end to let you guys, I don't know, I guess go on a true crime spree. But if you guys don't know this, these characters in the scripts were all based off the Charles Starkweather and Carol Ann, I call it Fugate or Fugate. I have no clue how you enunciate that last name, Fugate. But those were the inspirations. Starkweather went on a murder spree of 11 bodies between November of 1957 until his apprehension in January of 58. I do believe Carol actually did at least kill one person and everything. So she actually was incarcerated for 18 years before she was given parole. And she still walks free today. She walks free. She's still alive. She's like 84, I believe, and everything. But she was trialed at 14, while Starkweather was trialed at 20, which, again, is already fucking, like, creepy enough. That's a 6 years difference. Like, dude, you're a grown-ass man hanging around with a fucking preteen.
What years were they active? Like, this is like
November 1957 and January 1958. Yeah. Okay. They traveled together. And I only... when I read the name Starkweather, I was like, that sounds so familiar. And I remember watching a documentary about Stephen King about, when he was a kid, that he kept newspaper clippings about the Starkweather case. And his mom was kind of a little scared for him. It's like, why do you keep that? He was like, so that he knows not to run into people like that. Like, he kept it as a scrapbook of, if someone is this demented and fucked up, this is my sign to steer clear away from this guy. So the Starkweather name kind of has a little connection to King because King kind of followed it. But there's your true crime podcast episodes to go dig into for the Starkweather case. After learning about this, I have a few lined up that it's like, oh, I gotta check this out, from podcasters. And
That's a
yeah,
cool little fact.
cool little factoid, cool little thing for you guys when we add to the real life horror of, it's like you guys can go dig into that when our in between this and our next episode. But Chris, do you have anything else to say about this movie before we wrap things up?
Just Jake Busey is totally unhinged, and I loved how the makeup decided to do the electric chair burns on his head for his ghost form. I thought that was a cool little extra tidbit there for a little extra.
I'm still trying to figure out how the other ghost dude died, because there's one dude from the 50s. You can definitely tell, like, broken nose or whatever, maybe car accident. But the black guy, you don't really see. You don't know if he died of a heart attack or the ghost that hang out with Michael J. Fox. Yeah, because one dude looks like a car accident, the other dude doesn't.
Yeah,
makes you wonder what happened to him.
Maybe he started a little too much nose candy there.
Maybe. What were you gonna say, Mike?
I just wanted to say that I didn't put two and two together, but that was Weta Digital who did the visual effects, and they've actually released a Q&A about it, about their time working on it, and they used 500 visual effects shots for Weta. We all know where Weta is today.
That's a video. Send me the link to that so we can drop that in the description below for people. Again, I would love to sit there. I know not many people drop so many links in their description, but you know what? Like, if this adds to the talk and for your guys' interest in this stuff, like, I love doing that. It adds interest. But yeah, with that being said, I guess we can wrap it up. Chris, where can we find you on the socials?
Instagram and YouTube, Jealous Slacker.
And Mike, where can we find you?
Currently only Instagram as Michael Monyar Molina, and I post my photography and keep over me.
Oh, okay. You can find me as the Gothic Storyteller on Twitch and most of the socials of Instagram, Thread, though I think I may be giving that one up. I don't know how to work Thread. But TikTok and, YouTube. And definitely sit there and follow us on the Patreon. We have a Patreon going, and of course, we release our episodes on Spotify, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music, and iHeartRadio. That's for some reason, a difficult freaking platform to try to name all of them, But yeah, that's where you can listen to our show. This is obviously the YouTube only, so you only catch this on YouTube. And with that being said, folks, thank you guys again. Chris, say goodbye to everyone.
Bye-bye, everybody.